Good evening and welcome. Thank you to everyone for spending part of your Monday evening with us. My name is Angela Rodriguez, Still Canyon High School PTO president for this academic year. PTO is pleased to host this evening in-person forum so that you can learn more about the candidates running for vacant community board member seats on the Still Canyon High School governing board. Tonight, the candidates will have an opportunity to introduce themselves and respond to some prepared questions about their qualifications for the board as well as their intentions and priorities if elected to serve. In an effort to ensure the candidates' information is accessible to those unable to attend tonight's forum, PTO is recording the event and will post a link of the forum on the PTO website, social media site, Parent Square, and paw prints for families to view. Quick housekeeping, restrooms are located in the back, and please help yourself to refreshments. We have a total of 4 candidates running for the 2 vacant community member seats. They are in order of how they appear on the ballot. Kara Trudgeon, Myra Giordona, Joseph Oxel, and Michelle Silverthorne. I want to be mindful of everyone's time and ask that you limit your response to a maximum of 3 minutes per question. I will now turn the forum over to Mr. Parr, who has graciously agreed to serve as tonight's moderator.
All right, good evening. Thank you for your interest. Glad you are all here. I'll keep time, but it'll just be 1, 2, and 3 as you're building up to the 3 minutes. So just I won't wave my hand too much, but I will be letting you know how long if it's getting into that time. So we'll start with Kara Trudgeon with question 1, move on to Myra Giordano, followed by Joseph Axel, and then Michelle Silverthorne. We'll then rotate who answers the question first. So we'll open up, just allowing us to get to know you all better. Briefly state your name, connection to Steele Canyon High School, and what makes you uniquely qualified to serve on the governing board. Ms. Trudgeon.
So I'm Kara Trudgeon. I am connected to Steele Canyon through community. I live very near the school, and I've had 2 children attend the school. My daughter recently graduated last year. My son is a sophomore this year. And what makes me uniquely qualified? I've been in education for about 20 years now. I started out as a clinical psychologist working with students on a contract. I then went into school psychology. I have my teaching credential, both general education and ed specialist, special education, and I was also a school administrator for a little over 8 years. So I feel like I've served many roles in schools as well as been a parent through preschool all the way up through graduating. I also have a variety of experiences both with special populations and neurotypical students as well. So I've taught general education, I've taught special education. So I think it just gives me a really wide lens on the variety of the student body. And then being a part of the community, I'm always interested to serve how I can. And, education, especially public school education, is really a passion of mine. I truly believe that every student deserves education, and that is a human right. So that's something that I really want to, just serve my purpose in life and serve that role in the community. Did I miss any other part of that question? Yeah. Yeah. So that's it.
All right. Thank you, Kara. We'll move on to Myra, and I'll restate the question as we move down. Myra, briefly state your name, connection to Steele Canyon High School, and what makes you uniquely qualified to serve on the governing board.
All right. My name is Myra Giordano. I'm a lifelong community member. I grew up in Spring Valley. I currently live in Humboldt. I'm a dedicated Steele Canyon parent of a sophomore and a senior, and I'm a community board member. I have been for the past 3 years, and I'm the current board chair. And that makes me uniquely qualified to continue my involvement on the board for the upcoming 3 years. I'd like that opportunity. In addition, it gives me full insight into the requirements of the position, means that I have a lot of important efforts that are currently in progress that I'd like to continue working. There's a lot of efforts that we've recently approved, things like we just approved the press box, and there's efforts that we are getting ready to get rolling, things like additional improvements on our stadium and additional improvements in our facilities that I would like to continue working. Additional qualifications that I have are things that are listed on my application. My education, my professional experience, and those are things that I bring as I lead the board, and I try to lead a board that's collaborative, involved, informed, and I think that I've done a good job of bringing the board together, and I'd like the opportunity to continue doing that in the coming 3 years. Thank you.
Thanks.
All right. Thank you, Myra. Now, Mr. Joseph Oxel, briefly state your name, connection to Steele Canyon High School, and what makes you uniquely qualified to serve on the governing board.
Joe Oxel. My connection is a business owner in the community. I live in the community. I have a freshman attending Steele Canyon. Next year I'll have another freshman. The year after, God willing, I'll have a third freshman. And then 2 years after that, I'll have another freshman. So it would be a great opportunity to be of service and also be a part of my children as well as the other attending kids here and watch their development and the transitions that occur on a daily, weekly, monthly, yearly level at the school. In terms of unique qualification, honestly, I'm sure that we're all qualified. That's my feeling, and I'm sure there's a lot of other people who are very qualified as well that maybe don't have the opportunity. But the reason that I am here is that I have, though I have lots of service commitments and experience in my life, I don't have any in my own existing community. They're in San Diego as a whole, and I thought, what an awesome opportunity. I'm at a point in my life now where I can carve out the time, I can make this. And often, though I think through just circumstance, sometimes boards such as this might lean towards having more female involvement, and it's just the way it unfolds. I thought it would be great to bring my voice is unique. I've heard a number of times from a variety of people, and I thought I'd bring that perspective plus add another male perspective. And, I think through collaboration, the variety of perspectives that we can put into the mix while talking about the decisions that need to be made, it can only help. Thank you.
All right. Thank you. And now Michelle Silverthorne. Briefly state your name, connection to Steele Canyon High School, and what makes you uniquely qualified to serve on the governing board.
Thanks. My name's Michelle Silverthorne. I have 2 boys, a recent 2024 grad and a prospective 2027, so he is a sophomore. We live in Pine Valley, and so I honor the opportunity to select quality education for my children, and this is a way for me to jump in. And do that as well. I have been in the nonprofit profession for 20 plus years, so I have a pretty good handle on what it means to be a board member, in that I have supported numerous boards, management, pulling those agendas together, doing all those pieces, but also just the every piece of a nonprofit organization I'm quite familiar with. So taking it a little bit different approach and just understanding the importance of how to manage and run a nonprofit and the importance of a governing board and just the skills that are needed to support that. I would say as well, yeah, I mean, I guess that's the biggest thing. I mean, I've been in nonprofit for a long time. That was the other part of it. That through my career, too, I've been in a lot of different areas. So even though I don't have a lot of expertise in education, Way back when, I worked in a food bank and worked on food justice issues. Following that, it was immigration worker health issues. I've worked on the census. I've worked on rent relief for COVID-impacted renters. And just most recently, I'm working on a project for artists as workforce development. So I just feel like education is another piece that I can wrap in there, and I can learn all the pieces of it as well. Thank you.
All right.
Thanks.
Thank you. As we move on to question 2, we will start with Myra Giordano. What do you see as the primary role of a governing board member?
So, for me, the most important responsibility that we have as the governing board is our oversight of the financials. Our existing board has been deeply involved in complex budget reviews and decisions. A lot of those have been routine. So we've done reviews of budgets, we've reviewed the reserves, we've taken salary actions, we've approved projects that I've mentioned, and we've identified improvements and approved those as well. So these decisions that we've made have had a wide range of impacts across the school and for our community. And they've had impacts on academics, they've had impacts on our students, we've had decisions that have impacted our students' ability to access mental health, welfare. We've had decisions that have had the ability to impact athletics, safety. We approved a sheriff's repeater to improve the officers' ability to communicate and have better connectivity. We've had all sorts of things that they're in the financial realm, but they have this wide range of impacts. So I think, even though that financial is that primary, it really goes so far beyond financial. So that I would say is the most important responsibility. Beyond that, there's so much more. We're involved with so much more. The hardest thing that we do is expulsions. That's something that just every single time it is the most difficult, and we ensure that not only is the student considered, but that the student's being treated fairly, but that all applicable policies are considered, and that the welfare of the Steele Canyon students and staff that as a whole are considered. And that's just a process that's it's really difficult for all of us as board members, but it's also just really important for us to go through that process and ensure that the process is followed, and maintain the integrity of that. So that's another important piece of what we do. And there's so much more to say, but I want to respect the time here. So thank you.
All right, thank you. And Mr. Oxel, what do you see as the primary role of a governing board member?
Again, it's so broad, and you touch on it, there's not enough time, but what I would say is checks and balances. If I had to bring it down to the simplest, shortest term, checks and balances, it's people who have a vested interest, but also have oversight, experience, and want the best. And I think we all do that. I could just in the short term, I've met everybody, and the fact that we're all here, I think is indicative of that. I think we all want the best for our kids and other children. I bring some very unique background that I think. I'm 53 years old, and I've got just. I left home due to violence and abuse as a teenager, and I still finished school, and then with a year gap, I put myself into college and managed to get accepted into the Honor Society with straight A's. So I was a high-risk student. I was in the system of trying to seek help and couldn't get help. When I left home, I sought help at school, and I saw help with the police, and found dead ends. And so I feel like I've got an understanding of kids that are in situations that might be atypical, or yeah, that I can just understand things in a way that I've been there, done that, and it takes one to know one kind of feeling. So along those same lines, I've got one child who has an IEP. I have one child who's skipped a grade and he's still the top in his class and probably needs to skip another grade. I've got an athlete. I've got another, another child who's many of those same traits in a variety of different areas. So I've got a lot of experience in just different ways that I think I would bring value to the board and just perspective. And when I jokingly say I'm a numbers savant. I started my own business. I've got a little over 40 employees. We do, millions and millions in sales, and I did that from a broken childhood. And I'm the numbers guy. Everybody, and that's one of the most important jobs I think of this role, is just making sure that the management of the finances is done in a prudent way, which brings the most value and the most reward for what the main goal is, which is the students. So thank you.
Thank you. Moving to Michelle, what do you see as the primary role of a governing board member?
Yeah. Not to make light of the situation, but to avoid things that happened like at Canyon Crest, right? You don't want to be the headline news. So, and I think that relates back to fiduciary responsibility. Firstly, acting in mission of the charter of the school, to ensure that all students can learn and are entitled to the rigorous and relevant curriculum. And then, I don't know that it needs to be explained too much, but just, that financial responsibility, fiduciary responsibility to ensure like what's happening is good for all involved, and that it's equitable and adequate for those goals that we have set out for us.
Thank you. And Kara, what do you see as the primary role of a governing board member?
Well, to echo the financial piece, I do think the financial oversight is one of our primary roles. But to add to what everyone has said, I think another role that's very important in our seat is being a voice for the community as well, and being that community liaison. And serving that in a variety of ways. As we've all shared, we have children in different aspects of the Steel Canyon community. So maybe some are in sports, some are in theater, some are in all of these different areas. And so it's a wide representation, which I think it's important for the board to have that, so that we have those experiences and the groups of the community populations to speak with and for. When it is our platform to do so. The other aspect that I think is a very important piece is driving forward the statement of take care of this place, take care of each other, and how do we portray that as a board? How are we taking care of this place? How are we taking care of each other? And making the choices that really reflect that and model that for the students and families.
All right. Thank you. As we move on to the third question, Mr. Oxnell, you will start. Joe, what do you feel are the biggest strengths and areas of growth at Steel Canyon?
Biggest areas of strength and growth. So being in the community we moved here in 2015. I had no real experience with East County outside of that, and fell in love with it instantly at first sight, basically. We showed up to look at a house, put an offer in, and knew this was our home. Since then, I've been asking everybody and anybody who's available to talk about it, about the schools, because as a parent, that's a critical aspect. So I've heard just great things, and not being actively involved in the PTA or on the board, I don't know what any of the difficulties are, honestly, and they're not out there being shared at a public level, at least within the groups that I'm in. My hope is that if that's an accurate present or portrayal of the current situation, that it's much of it is good, that my goal is to try to continue to help that and make good even better. I say to my employees and those that I mentor, that good is the killer of great, and that often many of us, we settle for good outside of the fear or the lack of wanting to do the work and dig in for the great. And I'm a great go-getter in terms of, like, I fight for great all the time. It's in my DNA. I'm driven. You can ask anybody around me. I can't stop doing the things that I'm passionate about. And when I pick something like this, I dig my heels in and I go. And I'd love to just be a part of it. I'd love to understand more and grow with it. I've been blessed with the fact that nearly all things, without sounding egotistical, but I'm trying to tell people about myself, but nearly everything I try, I do well at. And there are some things that I know what my weak points are and I struggle, and I share that with the people around me so that I have a checks and balances with that, and I look for others' advice in the areas that I'm weakest. And in the areas where I'm strong, I try to bring those resources and share that. And I think I would continue to do the same thing I've been doing, which is push, 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 grow, 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 help, help, help.
All right, thank you. And Michelle, Ms. Silverthorne, what do you feel are the biggest strengths and areas of growth at Steele Canyon?
Yeah, that's a really good question, and I think that part of, even though I had a recent graduate, like just really getting into more about how the school functions in the community. That being said, we travel from Pine Valley to come down here, so I think that speaks for itself, that just the institution of Steele Canyon, that far and wide people know that it is a good school, that it is, in the Grossmont Unified High School District, that it is right there under Helix. So I think that that's the opportunity for growth, is to see how we can get closer to being in that number one spot. I know that a lot of that is testing, and I think there's a lot of character at this school too. I've sat in on the senior interviews for the last 2 years, and hearing what the seniors have to say, especially those who have transferred, there's something special about Steele Canyon as far as the strength too, that it doesn't sound like happens at other high schools. It's hard to compare, having been at only one high school, but I think that the seniors really have spoken to that at those interviews. So that's where I would say, like, the strengths are just like in the teachers, in just the environment itself. And then the opportunity for growth is just to continue to see where those points are that can be flipped a little bit or pushed a little bit harder. And if I were to be able to be in this position, I would like to dig deep and see what else we can do to improve.
All right, thank you. And Ms. Trudgeon, what do you feel are the biggest strengths and areas of growth at Steele Canyon?
I also have the student that graduated about a year ago, and I will say I think one of the strengths of Steele Canyon is building the competence and competence of the students that come through. I watched my own child experience that, and the group of people that she surrounded herself with. So I think that is across all settings, all classrooms. It really is a focus, and I hear it in the way that she speaks, the way she presents herself, as well as her peers. I also think that Steele Canyon has done a really excellent job meeting the needs of students at all levels and having a high level of expectation for all students across the board. And that goes even through trying times of COVID, and just being really on that cutting edge of what are we going to do to support our students holistically. And looking at the whole health of the child. I think that was really refreshing to see that was a focus and continues to be a focus for the community as a whole. As far as growth, I feel like everybody expects you to say traffic, right? Everybody expects traffic because nobody likes to sit in that. But really, truly, I think to continue with the area of strength, staying in that cutting edge piece, right? Making sure we have the widest variety of programs that we can for students, the most relevant programs in a changing professional world, and making sure that continues to be an area of growth and focus, I think is something that I really want to be a part of for my own child, for our community as a whole, for our society as a whole, right? Like, we have to develop well-rounded human beings, and hope that they can carry the torch from here. So I do think that's probably one of the largest challenges facing high schools in general. Yeah. Thank you.
All right, thank you. And Ms. Giordano, what do you feel are the biggest strengths and areas of growth at Steel Canyon?
So our strength is definitely our people. And so for the past 3 years, I've been able to work so closely and have regular engagement with Scott, our principal, our grade level principals, our teachers, our counselors, and all of our other staff. And it's just such a strength. And I think that's what we see, and that's what's impacting our students. That's what we see. And I'm just always impressed with their dedication to our students, to our community, and that's what's helping our students grow. And so, we're continuing to increase our test scores. We recently passed our WASC, and we have our full 6-year accreditation, which is just a great accomplishment. And as far as areas of growth, that WASC identifies growth areas. Those aren't my growth priorities, but identifies ones that resonate with Scott. It identifies that, we'll be using data to address achievement gaps and equity. They'll be using what they call a multi-tiered system of support, an MTSS framework, strengthening structures for college and career readiness, and strengthening equitable grading practices. And so all of those things are things that we know the school will be working on. So as a board, we know that the school's going to be focused on those because the WASC told them to focus on. So I can focus on as a board, I can focus on other priorities that I want to make sure get done. So as far as an area of growth that I'm focused on right now, that's why you can hear me saying that I'd like to focus a lot on making sure that the facilities get prioritized. And so I know that the WASC and others are pushing on the growth in the academics, the growth in these other areas. And so I'm kind of pushing on making sure that our budget's managed and that we're looking at things like site-wide lighting, bleachers, an additional scoreboard upgrade to get an even bigger one for our stadium, baseball and softball field upgrades, and additional upgrades that need to be done for our gym floor and bleachers.
Thank you.
I'm so sorry.
All right, Ms. Silver, you're leading off this question. What do you see as the biggest challenges Steel Canyon will face over the next 5 years?
You know what I love about that question is that, in interviews, they say, do you have any questions for us? And that was a question that I wanted to ask to you all. Because I'm interested to know what challenges will be coming down the pike too, like being in this role. So I guess I should have thought about that question to respond rather than asking it. Even though COVID is behind us, I think that there was still some lessons learned from that. And trying to think about like what else happens. I guess that there's still a fallout from that, right? So there's still going to be students coming through that have some education gaps. English language learners might be increasing, maybe not. But I think that will probably, that's what comes to mind for the biggest challenge. I still would love to hear what you all will have to say too. But just addressing that group of students that were younger and in their formative years in a sense when they had the primary learning of the mathematics and the English and the different things. So I think that there's going just to be different challenges in the learning as this next group of students comes through.
Thank you. All right, moving down, Kara, Ms. Trudgeon, what do you see as the biggest challenges Steel Canyon will face over the next 5 years?
I would say the first thing that comes to mind is financials, right? Like understanding the funding that goes behind schools, knowing budgets statewide as well. Just the uncertainty that is always kind of swirling around that, I think, is increasing. And with that then comes attendance, right? Because our funding is driven primarily by attendance, and making sure that we continue to be a place that people seek out and want to bring their students to. So I think having that, the funding in the back of your mind, and making this a community and a school system that supports that continued growth and continued desire to draw students and families. Through that, then supporting the staff to, explore and try new things and expand their learning as well. And I think all of that is multifold and complex, and just trying to navigate that with probably increasingly limited funding.
All right, thank you. And Ms. Giordano, what do you see as the biggest challenges Steele Canyon will face over the next 5 years?
So similarly, I think that the funding is a big issue, and so what you see is the ending of what we call the COVID funds, or ESSER funding, and so it's also the changes to headcount or attendance can impact your funding. So, and another issue that is very, very relevant to our school is whether or not we'll be able to get a bond, because our school is an aging school, and that's very relevant to our facilities. We were hoping that might be something that could be done soon. Maybe even we were hoping for it this year, but that's not going to be this year. So we're really looking for that in the near future, maybe in 2 to 4 years. So that's something that we really need to keep an eye on. So ensuring that these items are managed and minimizing any impacts to our students and learning and staff, and keeping an eye on our facilities and maintenance is something that needs to continue to be a high priority. Thankfully, Steele Canyon, under Scott's leadership, has really kept a good eye on this. They've budgeted well, and reserves are maintained well. So, and continuing to be a school of choice, as you've mentioned. So, when other schools across the state have had, huge impacts because of the reduction in these funding, our school has not been hit as hard, but we need to continue to keep an eye on this, and so it's something that is just really high on my list, and something that I'm continuing to participate in monthly facilities meeting and work closely with the district on the bond options that are moving forward to make sure that our school stays in a good position. Thank you.
All right, and Mr. Axel, a question to you. What do you see as the biggest challenges Steele Canyon will face over the next 5 years?
I've got so many different directions my brain's going on trying to answer that, but what it keeps coming back to is we're in a changing world. The world has never changed more rapidly for me individually and those around me as it has, in the last handful of years. Whether it's technology, whether it's a almost 600% increase in overdoses in the last decade, from a steady of 19 to 21,000 people a year for decades after decades, and now we're averaging over 100,000 people with nearly only a 5-year gap from that 20,000. My guess is that number's not going to change in terms of going backwards anytime soon. It's going to get worse. One of the other changing aspects is I think that there, in the future, and I just heard this statistic recently, that for every 13 people that are retiring from the trades, whether that's automotive, construction, people with skill sets there's one person going into it to replace them. And that's going to create a changing world for all of us, and especially the students which will be here much longer and farther after us. And being a CFO, my job in part is future planning. It's trying to read the tea leaves, per se, trying to take in all the data from all the various sources and trying to make sense of it. One area in my life specifically where I've been able to do that is I saw some of the economic conditions that we're currently facing about 2 years ago. And people were saying, Joe, you're future tripping, this isn't accurate. And I watched a 37% in real money inflationary change in 24 months in my business. And I can only imagine that others are experiencing that on both sides of the business, whether they're the consumer or whether they're in ownership or management. And I can't imagine that the school is any different, and that the difficulties that the school faces with trying to plan budgets and dealing with state, local, municipal monies, where they're going to come from, the amounts of the monies that are coming and being allocated, the allocations actually coming due when they're supposed to be coming due, as opposed to, I've been privy to federal allocations that were guaranteed and then they weren't guaranteed. And so there's a myriad of things that can come up, and the thing about the future difficulties is that none of us know. And so it's my belief that we're prepared as much as we can in a variety of ways without it being detrimental to the daily actions today. And as an extreme, a person climbing into a bunker and saying I'm safe isn't really safe, because there's a lot of life out there. And I'd like to be a part of planning for the worst, preparing as if it's the best, and continue to try to strive for growth and continue to excel like Steel Canyon has before me, and I believe will continue after me if I'm a part of this.
Thank you. Based on, it's 6:10, that's going to be the last official question we have for you this evening. We'll go down the line and allow everybody an opportunity to provide any type of closing statement, add anything to any previous answers, or anything else that you have to help our community make the most informed decision possible. So we'll start, Ms. Trudgeon. Any closing remarks?
I think one of the things that I've really enjoyed, I came onto the board late last year. I filled a vacancy that was left, a short-term vacancy, and I've really just enjoyed being a part of that process and seeing the workings of the board and getting to be a part of my older students' lives, right? You get to see things about their school that you wouldn't know any other way, and that's really been valuable to me, and I've appreciated that opportunity very much, and would love the opportunity to continue to be a part of that. I do think there's, of course, lots of room for progress and growth, and I am a very progress forward-thinking person, so I like to always be looking ahead and looking at what can we be doing better. Even if we're doing a stellar job right now, there's always room for improvement. So I like to be a part of that and just be, in the action and driving that forward. So I would appreciate that opportunity.
All right, thank you. Ms. Giordano, closing remarks.
Yeah, I'm excited for the opportunity to continue the work that I've been doing for the past 3 years and see some exciting efforts that we're doing through completion. It's really exciting to me to think about what the campus might be able to look like in another 3 years when my youngest graduates, if our incumbent board remains in place and keeps our momentum going with these projects. I am leading a collaborative and well-informed board that's deeply engaged with our community, and I look forward to the opportunity to continue doing so. Thank you.
All right, and Mr. Oxel, closing remarks.
Well, I would love the opportunity to serve on the board. Through other service commitments, I know how much it feeds me as an individual, and oftentimes I've had people make comments, along the lines of, it's so nice that you participate, you give of your time, but After my very first service commitment decades ago, it has always been to some degree a selfish thing. The feeling, the growth, the being a part of that I've gotten from giving to others freely when I could be at home sitting on the couch scrolling channels or Facebook, it's far more gratifying, and it takes some effort, honestly, as we all know. You know, I started my day today at 4:30. And my day isn't completely over when I'm done here, but I'm happy to participate. And I'm at a point in my life right now where I feel like I really can dig in and give back in these areas. And my experience, having a child that is gifted, and then on the other extreme, a child with special needs, I've attended many functions, either one-on-one or at a group level at all the schools that I've been with. And what I have noticed is that moms are dominantly the source of these. And I am so grateful and thankful for that, because there were a lot of years where I couldn't do every one because I had other responsibilities. And my wife did it. And now I'm at a turning point in my career where I can make the decisions. And you know, my wife said to me one day, looking out the window, staring not too far in the distant past, and she said, "Are you there yet?" Because for many decades, I would say, I've got to do this, it's for us, it's for our future. And when she said that, it just clicked. And I said, I'm not sure if we're there, but we're there enough. And it was a turning point for me, and this is part of that in terms of trying to give back and give to the community. And I'll end with this. The individuals up here, I've shared a little bit. I know a little bit more about some than others, and whomever is chosen is very qualified, and their heart's in it. And so whoever is taking the time to watch this video on the internet, just know that your vote is not going to go the wrong direction no matter what your decision is. And I feel confident that whether I'm a part of this or for whatever reason that I'm not, I'm going to be a part of Steele Canyon, and I'm going to be active in my kids' lives and by proxy, the lives of those that I come in contact with. And so I thank you all for your consideration. I thanks for the time and the opportunity to be a part of this, and I just hope the best for everybody and for the school as well.
All right. Thank you. And Ms. Silverthorne, closing remarks.
Thanks. Yeah, I mean, as all of us, you know, we're just like grateful for the opportunity, and I'm glad that there's an open process and that we can see, you know, who's here and the skills that are among us. So yeah, it would just be a great opportunity to be a part of this, use my skill set as a nonprofit professional for the last 20 years. Not a whole lot more to say to that. I mean, I would love the opportunity to dig in and complete some of the projects that are in play and support that in any way that I can. So thank you for the opportunity, and yeah.
All right. As we close, I want to thank you all on behalf of me, on behalf of my administration team and our staff and our students and our whole community. The responsibility of operating a charter school and having kids at a charter school, working at a charter school, are greater than that of you know, your traditional schools. We're responsible for everything that happens as a result of us and the responsibilities of the community. So I want to thank you all for being willing and volunteering to run for our board, and just even that shows the fact that we have 4 people in our community that want to do this, shows how strong our community is. So I just want to thank you for sharing information about yourself to help our Cougar families make an informed decision as they cast their vote for the community board member seats on the Steele Canyon High School Governing Board. Ballots have been mailed out to Steele Canyon families. They also include a bio by each of the candidates. Your ballot can be returned by mail or delivered in person. All ballots must be received in the front office by 3:30 p.m. on Wednesday, September 25th. To increase convenience, we will have a table in front of the school before school starts where ballots can be submitted beginning Thursday morning, September 19th. Thank you all again, and I wish everybody who took the time to watch this a good night. So, thank you all. Good job. Good job.